And a good Monday morning, Birds fans. Appreciate you streaming in here early with us on Birds 365. Kind of a good news, bad news deal today. The bad news is that, yeah, you had to go all day yesterday without Eagles football. There were some damn good football games on there, and Johnny Mac and I will talk about it, but it's kind of a tough when you got to get to a Sunday Suns Birds. Here's the good news. You got the day, the show, the floor, all to yourself. Monday night football action. Commanders coming to town. The Eagles trying to get to 9-0. Johnny Mack, is this team prepped, ready to rock and roll and stay undefeated after the game tonight against the Commanders?
I think so. Well, we'll see. I mean, I didn't realize this, but this will be the third game for the Eagles in 29 days, Jody. I mean, it has been such a weird schedule. Barely see this team. I sometimes I wonder. They have 9 games after, starting tonight, obviously. They'll play those 9 games in 48 days to give you an example of how weird this little schedule quirk with the bye and the mini bye coming sort of almost back to back. I don't know. The only thing I can look at and say Washington's got a chance is this team is really rusty because they're never on the stinking field 3 times in a month. So that's about the only thing I can throw in the Washington pool. Otherwise, I mean, and I think you got more indication of it yesterday. Everybody's saying, yeah, but Buffalo and Kansas City, the Eagles are better than both of those teams. You saw Buffalo again. I joke, look, they're really explosive. I texted you. Josh Allen is extraordinarily talented. I mean, it's absurd how talented he is. But I got to tell you, Jody, he made more mistakes in the fourth quarter and overtime than Jalen Hurts has made all season. I mean, at some point, you got to have a balance. At some point, you got to have a balance, especially to win big games. And we already saw the Eagles against the Vikings. So, I mean, I give that team credit for winning games. They find these weird ways to win games. They certainly love the new coach as compared to the old coach. And I think that's a big part of it. They're playing for him. But I mean, the Eagles, you already saw them against Minnesota. They dominated. And we haven't seen them against Kansas City. And I like everybody else. I'm scared of Patrick Mahomes, but I'm not, they can't, they're not nearly, and I'm talking about the Chiefs, they're not nearly as well rounded as the Eagles. So, the Eagles can beat you in so many different ways. I'm a little bit scared of the 3 games in 29 days, but other than that, and even if they have a hiccup somewhere along the way, whether it's tonight, whether it's Tennessee, whatever, I mean, I don't expect them to go 17-0. It's not going to change the fact that I think they're the best team in football.
Here's where you get the balance, J Mac, and I hear you about the downtime that the Eagles have been in due to scheduling. Prior to, the Eagles had been a dominant first half team over second half team. They come out and just put leads on other teams and kind of take their heart away. And on a bunch of the early wins with this team, they kind of threw it into cruise control and weren't nearly as effective offensively in the second half. Maybe we see the opposite now. Maybe this well-rested team needs to get back into gear, that they might get off to a bit of a slow start tonight. But as the game wears on, because they're as well-rested as they are, they just grind down the opponent, continue to add to the lead, and it ends up being a more lopsided or a blowout type win because of the second half rather than the first half. That's the one thing that I'm intrigued by going into tonight's game, because the point you make is an excellent one. They really haven't played a lot of football over the last 3 weeks because of the way the schedule laid itself out. But while there may be a downside to it, there may also be an upside to it, that they're ready to just continue to open up a lead and or crush the opponent in the second half. Tonight's opponent is the Commanders. Up until last week, when you mentioned that Minnesota team, which found a way to win in Buffalo, they found a way to win the week before against the Commanders. A bad late Taylor Heineke pick kind of set them up for the game-winning field goal. But the Commanders were up 10 points in the second half against a good Vikings team. And prior to that, they had won 3 games in a row, 2 of which were led by Taylor Heineke. So you've got to at least admit this is a different and a better Commanders team than the one the Eagles beat up on in week number 3.
Yeah, no question about it. They are better. I think, for whatever reason, I talked about it with Minnesota playing for the coach versus the prior coach. Taylor Heineke's that kind of guy on the field. Guys want to play for him. He brings a different energy. Whatever, people hate intangible things, but they're real. They're real. And you see it with Jalen Hurts to a much higher degree in Philadelphia. People want to play for him because they like him and he's a natural leader and they get behind him. Same thing with Taylor Heineke. Now, he doesn't have the skill set, but it still brings an energy to the team, a focus to the team, and they play better when Taylor Heineke's on the field. Now, I talked about it a lot last week. I'll talk about it a lot today. I think he's very limited from a skill set standpoint. So I think ultimately there's a ceiling there. But Washington has a lot of good players, and I know people don't believe me. I've been saying this for years. When you have issues at the quarterback position to their degree, you're going to have issues being consistent from week to week. But again, they might have the best defensive front in football, and we'll see. They're playing games with Chase Young. I think he'll play, but probably 15, 20. But even without him, I mean, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne are having career years. But Montez Sweat, I talked about, to me, is the most underrated defensive player in the entire league. And by the way, Cameron Curl would probably be top 5 in that list for me. He's their top-tier safety who's been excellent this season. Terry McLaurin, Eagles fans know about him all too well. He's been a bit of an Eagles killer since he arrived. Curtis Samuel, that's the one player they had trouble with in week 3. They couldn't get him the football consistently, but he's a really difficult player to do with. Manufactured touch guy, can do a lot of different things. James Robinson is back, so you got that 1-2 punch. He wasn't there week 3 with Antonio Gibson, so they're pretty good at running back as well. The quarterback's an issue, but they have good players, and they have more good players than I think people realize.
And Curtis Samuel could very well be a key guy tonight because we found out over the weekend that Avonte Maddox is a no-go, not going to be in the lineup tonight, not going to be dressed. But they are getting Josiah Scott back, who had missed the previous game against the Texans. He's their number 1 backup slot corner. And if his ankle is good, then the drop-off is there. But I don't think it's off the charts, off the table from Maddox to Josiah Scott. But Samuel is a guy you're going to have to keep an eye on, because if I were the Commanders, that would be a guy I'd be looking to get the football to. A backup player who is coming back off a week's injury. Samuel is a guy who does scare me a little bit. And the one thing the Eagles have to most definitely have to be on top of tonight is they got to know where the back judge is, because that's a play that the Commanders like to run. Yeah. Run that D back into the back judge and see if you can get Curtis Samuel opened up by the end.
Throw it into triple coverage and hope the back judge wipes out the safety. That's in every playbook, I think, Jody.
It worked like a charm for the Commanders last week, but having that happen again, probably a bit of a long shot. All right, so we got Commanders and Eagles. We're going to talk about both sides today. Chris Russell from the Redskins Radio Network, 980.
By the way, Chris Russell got a shout out from Kirk Cousins when Kirk went back to Washington a couple weeks ago. I said that's pretty cool. For Chris.
Did he? All right, I had missed that. We'll ask Kurt about that, Chris about that when we get him up here in less than 10 minutes. And then hour number 2, we're going to get our buddy Paul Domwich up, who's got his stat pack up on JAKIBSports.com prior to the game actually being played, which is cool.
Yeah, nice. We don't get to talk to Damo usually. A weekend game, he puts it up on Friday. And we're done. We're off the air. So rare time. This quirky schedule works out. We can talk to him about it before the game. That's nice.
Which, by the way, it's a Monday nighter. The Eagles have played one Monday nighter, which we already referenced here. The beatdown of the Vikings in week 2. And yeah, if I'm the Eagles, I'm an Eagle fan. I'd throw my chest out a little bit this week. The whole, well, those two AFC teams. Well, the team that the Eagles took to the woodshed in week 2 here in Philadelphia went into Buffalo, not at home under their cozy dome, into Buffalo and beat the Bills yesterday. We could point out that the Bills kind of beat themselves because Josh Allen fumbles the ball in the end zone. And
I think both teams, I think both teams, that was a tremendous, that's my thing about the NFL. It's so compelling in the final 2 minutes of the game. People think they're watching great football. There were so many mistakes from both teams in those final 2 minutes in overtime. It's like, it's exciting, but I mean, Minnesota can't get in on 4th and 1 with a quarterback. Well, they might have got in, but who knows? They called it on the field. Then Buffalo can't do it. I go back to Jason Kelce on this podcast. He's like, quarterback sneak, easiest play in football. Maybe in Philadelphia when he had Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts, or nobody else, evidently, even Josh Allen, that game's over. All he's got to do is get the snap, and he can't handle the snap. And all of a sudden it turns tail. And then, by the way, it wasn't Kansas City versus Buffalo, because Kansas City only had 13 seconds. Minnesota, I think, had 41 seconds to bleed off the clock and win the game. They almost lost the game. They went down the field so quickly. And then it ultimately, I don't know what Ed Donatell's plan is defensively, but he's got 2 potential Hall of Fame defensive backs who kind of make up for it and make big plays. Harrison Smith last week, you mentioned the interception by Taylor Heineke. Patrick Peterson got Josh Allen twice this week. Those guys are sort of like James Bradbury to build up. They're so freaking savvy. They just make chicken salad out of chicken you-know-what. I don't know what Ed Donatell tries to do as a defensive coordinator, but I mean, there were so many mistakes on both sides of the football. It's like, what is going on here? And those are 2, let's be honest, you got to be real. Those are 2 of the best teams in football. So I'm feeling pretty good if I'm an Eagles fan.
By the way, another mistake. The referees, that pass caught by Gabe.
Oh, yeah. He didn't catch that.
Not even close to being able to get his feet down, and they gave it to him. So you're right. It wasn't the picture-perfect game, but the excitement so outweighed everything else.
Yeah.
And the catch by Justin Jefferson.
Oh, that's
sorry. Should I not even mention his name here on Birds 365?
Well, by the way, why people
and the Philadelphia Eagles had every chance to take Justin Jefferson, and everyone in the Delaware Valley is screaming Justin Jefferson. That's one of the greatest catches in the history of the National Football League.
Yeah, it was. Might have been the greatest. I've never seen. That was better than Beckham's. I've seen a lot.
No question.
I've seen Moss. I've seen Carter. When I covered the Vikings, I've seen a lot. That might be the best catch I've ever seen. But it's when I talk about Buffalo and I talk about Josh Allen. First of all, I give him credit for being out there playing after his injury, and he plays the way he plays, and he's so dominant running the football. Him and Justin Fields, I don't know what you do to stop them from running the football. That might be the best play in the playbook for both the Bills and the Bears. I don't know how you stop that guy. But, man, I don't know. Too many mistakes. And anybody who's talking about the MVP race, look, Patrick Mahomes is probably going to win it unless Kansas City falls apart, which I don't see happening. And I wouldn't complain about that at all. And your guy, Tua, you mentioned he deserves to be in the conversation as well. Anybody putting Josh Allen over Jalen Hurts, I can't do it. He's got more talent. He's got more explosive ability. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Right. The top 3 candidates for the MVP right now are Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Tua Tagovailoa. Josh Allen is no better than the 4th top candidate for the MVP. Because, he's just making mistakes in big spots late in games which you just can't have. All right, Johnny Mac, Jody Mac, your Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. We're hoping to talk to shout out Chris Russell for the Washington radio network down there in D.C. He's going to hop on with us for a couple minutes. He's got to hop on the air in D.C. at 9 o'clock, so we'll get him for about 15, 20 minutes up here. And then in hour number 2, our own Paul Domwich from JAKIBSports.com going to jump in with us. So we got a lot to do today leading up to a Monday night affair between the Commanders and the Eagles. Can the Birds get to 9-0? We're talking about it right here on Birds 365.
Don't wait until after